enveloped in the midnight hush of Beaumont Manor. Amara Langford froze as the study door creaked open. Her gloved hands clutching the damning letter she'd penned in a haze of vulnerability, words that now threatened to expose her hidden life as a controversial wordsmith. The Lord himself emerged from the shadows, his piercing stare locking onto hers. The document already committed to his memory. Unraveling her carefully woven facade in an instant of electric confrontation. Heart pounding, she realized escape was futile. This was the precipice where secrets shattered and destinies entwined. If this shadowed revelation grips your soul, igniting a thirst for the passions and perils that follow, hit subscribe now, because the truths unveiled here will redefine love's boundaries forever. The velvet cloak of evening draped over Langford House as Amara Langford slipped into her attic chamber, the flickering candlelight dancing across stacks of forbidden manuscripts that bore her pseudonym's mark. Her auburn locks, loosely pinned in the style of a woman who balanced propriety with quiet rebellion, framed a face etched with determination, emerald eyes sharp yet shadowed by the weight of secrets. She had just sealed the envelope, her quill trembling from the raw confessions spilled onto the page, admissions of isolation amid society's glittering facade, echoes of a soul yearning for kinship with a distant scholar whose essays had pierced her guarded heart. But now, 3 weeks later, regret clawed at her like thorns in a forgotten garden. The letter, sent in a moment of uncharacteristic abandon after a cousin's lavish betrothal feast, quoted passages from her own scandalous tales, stories of forbidden desires and defiant heroines that had quietly sustained her family's dwindling fortunes. If Lord Kieran Beaumont, the reclusive intellectual she'd addressed, connected those lines to her hidden identity as a veiled muse, the revelation could shatter everything: her sister's promising match, her mother's fragile social standing, the mortgage on their modest estate that her royalties barely covered. Amara paced the creaking floorboards, her emerald gown whispering against the worn rugs, its modest neckline adorned with a single pearl brooch that symbolized her constrained elegance. She envisioned the Lord's distant manor in the misty hills of Northumberland, a place of towering libraries and echoing halls, where he reportedly buried himself in ancient texts to escape his own sorrows. Had he discarded her words as the ravings of a foolish admirer? Or worse, had he begun tracing their origins, unraveling the thread that led back to her? The household stirred below, her mother, Sienna, fretting over invitations to yet another assembly where Amara's spinster status drew pitying glances, her sister, Leora, glowing with the innocence of youth and the security of a suitor's affections. Amara had declined proposals before, from the oily merchant who saw her as a decorative asset, the aging baronet seeking a caretaker. None understood the fire within her, the compulsion to weave narratives that challenged the era's stifling norms. Tonight, resolve hardened in her chest like forged steel. She would reclaim that letter, no matter the risk. Posing as a companion to Beaumont's elderly aunt, arranged through discreet connections from her former tutor, she would infiltrate the manor, search his study, and erase her vulnerability before it doomed them all. As dawn's first blush crept through the window, Amara packed a small valise, her posture straight yet laced with unspoken defiance, ready to step into deception's embrace. What vulnerability would you risk exposing for the sake of your family's future? Comment below and share your thoughts. Amara's journey to Beaumont Manor unfolded under a canopy of brooding clouds, the carriage rattling along rutted roads that wound through fog-shrouded moors. She adjusted her simple gray traveling dress, chosen to evoke genteel poverty rather than her usual understated elegance, and rehearsed her alias, Miss Eloan Thorne, orphaned daughter of a minor cleric from Cornwall, seeking respectable employment. The name evoked distant Celtic roots, a nod to her love of ancient lore woven into her novels, but it masked the turmoil churning within. Her desires were simple yet profound: to protect her family from ruin, to continue crafting stories that gave voice to the silenced passions of women like herself. Yet her fears loomed larger: exposure as an author whose works critique the hypocrisies of high society, where heroines defied guardians and embraced forbidden loves. These tales had sold modestly but steadily, their anonymous allure funding the household since her father's untimely death in a carriage mishap 5 years prior, leaving debts that gnawed like persistent shadows. Relationships anchored her resolve. Sienna, her mother, embodied resilient grace, her once vibrant beauty faded by worry, forever scheming matches for her daughters amid whispered judgments of their reduced circumstances. Leora, at 19, possessed a serene beauty and compliant nature that promised a stable union with a neighboring estate's heir, provided no scandal tainted their name. Amara adored her sister, shielding her from the financial strains by channeling her own restless spirit into ink-stained nights. Secrets burdened her most. The pseudonymous success brought quiet triumph but isolation. No one knew the depths of her intellect, the way she infused her prose with personal longings for understanding. The letter to Kieran had been a rare crack in her armor, inspired by his treatise on forgotten Celtic myths, which resonated with her themes of hidden truths and enduring spirits. In it, she'd confessed a kinship of the mind, quoting her own works unwittingly, a slip born of solitude's ache. Arriving at the manor, Amara stepped into a world of weathered stone and ivy-cloaked towers, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and aged wood. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hargrove, eyed her suspiciously, a stern woman in starched black, her gaze probing like a raven's beak. "Lady Vivian awaits in the solar," she intoned, leading Amara through halls lined with portraits of stern ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow her every step. Lady Vivian Beaumont, Kieran's aunt, was a formidable presence despite her advanced years, silver hair coiled elegantly, eyes sharp as polished obsidian, seated in a high-backed chair amid tapestries depicting ancient legends. "Miss Thorne," she said, her voice a blend of curiosity and command. "My former companion recommended you highly. Tell me, why should I entrust my days to you?" Amara met her gaze steadily, channeling the poise from her image of quiet defiance. "Because I offer more than mere company, my lady. I can engage in discourse on literature and lore, play whist with cunning, and read aloud with the passion those tales deserve." She sensed the old woman's amusement, a test of spirit. "You've spirit," Vivian conceded, her lips twitching. "And a familiarity with myths that intrigues. My nephew hoards such knowledge in his archives." "You'll do." As Amara was shown to her modest chamber overlooking the wild gardens, she exhaled, the first layer of her plan secured. But whispers of Kieran's reclusive nature, widowed young, childless, devoted only to his studies, stirred an unwelcome curiosity. What wounds drove a man to such seclusion? That evening, dining quietly in her room, Amara mapped the manor's layout in her mind: the West Wing's library, the ground-floor study where correspondence likely lay. Kieran was absent, visiting allies in the nearby village. Tonight, she would begin her search, heart racing with the thrill of a heroine in her own unfolding tale. The clock struck 11 as Amara crept through Beaumont Manor's shadowed corridors, her dark shawl blending with the gloom, soft slippers muffling her steps on the Persian rugs. Moonlight filtered through leaded windows, casting ethereal patterns on walls adorned with faded heraldry, the air heavy with the musty aroma of old leather and lingering pipe smoke. Her pulse thrummed like a distant drum, each doorway a potential betrayal. She reached the study door, its brass handle cool under her fingers, unlocked, as if fate tempted her folly. Slipping inside, she was enveloped by a sanctuary of intellect, shelves groaning under tomes of mythology and history, a massive oak desk strewn with parchments, the faint scent of sandalwood evoking the man who dwelled here. Amara's emerald eyes, wide with resolve, scanned for the correspondence box, her auburn tendrils escaping their pin to frame her tense features. Rifling through drawers with trembling hands, she found letters from academics, sketches of ancient runes, but no sign of her own missive. Desperation mounted. If Kieran had discarded it, her risk was needless. But if he'd kept it, pieced together her identity. A floorboard creaked behind her. She whirled, heart seizing, to face him, Lord Kieran Beaumont, emerging from an alcove chair like a spectre summoned. Tall and lean, with raven hair silvered at the temples and eyes like storm-tossed seas, he held her letter unfolded, its creases worn from scrutiny. "Seeking something intimate, Miss Thorne?" His voice was velvet over steel, laced with knowing amusement. "Or should I address you as Amara Langford, the elusive veiled muse?" Shock rooted her in place, the room spinning. How? She'd been meticulous. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, posture straightening in defiance despite the vulnerability etching her face. "Misunderstanding?" He stepped closer, the letter a talisman between them. "You quoted your own myths in this confession of shared solitude. I've read your works, hidden passions amid Celtic ruins, heroines who defy fate. I recognized the voice immediately." His gaze held no malice, only intense curiosity, as if she'd awakened something long dormant. Amara's mind raced, flee, deny, confess? But his next words shattered her defenses. "You've entered my home under false pretenses to reclaim this. Why? Because you fear the connection you offered?" The inciting spark ignited, not anger, but an invitation to truth, forcing her to decide, retreat into masks or step toward the unknown affinity she'd glimpsed in his writings. As he extended the letter, their fingers brushed, sending a jolt through her. In that moment, deception cracked, and desire flickered, a romantic ember amid the peril. She couldn't flee now, the challenge was set, stakes elevated, reveal her soul or lose everything to silence. Dawn's tentative light pierced the manor's east windows as Amara navigated her first full day as Lady Vivian's companion, her mind a whirlwind from the night's revelation. Kieran's knowledge of her authorship hung like a sword, yet he'd neither exposed nor dismissed her, merely proposed an exchange of truths to explore the kinship she'd confessed in her letter. One honest revelation each day, he'd said, his storm eyes challenging her. Until we understand if this recognition is illusion or fate. Obstacles mounted swiftly. Vivian, perceptive as a hawk, sensed Amara's distraction during their morning stroll through the herb-scented gardens, where lavender brushed her skirts. "You carry shadows, child," the aunt remarked, her cane tapping rhythmically. "My nephew has that same haunted look since losing his betrothed in a tragic fever years ago. He buries himself in myths to forget." Amara deflected with tales of Celtic legends, deepening their bond, but the words stirred her own red herrings, doubts about Kieran's motives. Was he toying with her vulnerability for scholarly amusement? Bonds deepened unexpectedly in the library that afternoon. Kieran joined them unbidden, his presence commanding yet subdued, clad in a tailored coat that accentuated his lean frame. He discussed ancient runes with Vivian, but his glances toward Amara carried subtext, a silent pull. When alone briefly, he shared his first truth: "I collect myths not for knowledge, but to escape the void left by loss." "Your letter echoed that void, Amara, made me feel seen." Her response, compelled by their pact, "I write to survive," pouring unspeakable desires into pages because society deems them scandalous. The admission hung heavy, hope flickering amid frustration as his understanding gaze ignited unspoken tension. Yet peril escalated. A letter arrived from home, Leora's suitor wavered amid rumors of family debts, pressuring Amara's mission. Worse, whispers of a visiting guest, Darius Voss, a persistent admirer from London seasons past, whose rejected proposals masked a vengeful streak. If he arrived for the impending estate gathering, her disguise might crumble. Growth stirred within Amara. Evening found her in her chamber, penning notes for a new tale inspired by the manor's enigmas, heroines reclaiming power through truth. Kieran's proximity challenged her isolation. In stolen glances during dinner, where Vivian orchestrated subtle pairings, Amara felt frustration yield to tentative hope. But as night fell, a red herring note slipped under her door: secrets unravel soon. Beware the gathering. Unsigned, it heightened tension, ally or foe. The day closed with Amara at her window, auburn hair loose, emerald eyes reflecting the moonlit moors. Obstacles loomed, but so did possibility, a spark of passion amid the rising storm. Would you dare exchange truths with a stranger who holds your deepest secrets? Share your thoughts in the comments. The estate gathering loomed like gathering thunderheads, transforming Beaumont Manor into a hive of preparation, servants polishing silver, florists arranging blooms that scented the air with jasmine and rose. Amara's role as companion deepened her immersion, reading Celtic epics to Vivian in the solar, where sunlight gilded tapestries of legendary lovers. But the pact with Kieran intensified, their daily truths stripping layers. He confessed the guilt of his betrothed's death, blaming his absence during her illness. She admitted her writing stemmed from a childhood betrayal, a false friend who mocked her early tales. This vulnerability shifted beliefs. Amara began seeing Kieran not as a threat, but a mirror to her solitude. Their encounters grew charged, a brush of hands in the corridor, eyes meeting across the breakfast table where Vivian's knowing smiles hinted at orchestration. He needs fire to melt his ice, the aunt whispered once, raising stakes as Amara's heart betrayed her resolve to flee post-retrieval. Then came the game changer. During a midday library session, alone amid towering shelves redolent of vellum and ink, Kieran produced a hidden volume, proof sheets of her forthcoming novel, obtained through a discreet publisher contact. "I know your voice intimately now," he said, his tone laced with passion. "These stories aren't mere fiction, they're you, defiant, yearning." Shock coursed through Amara. He'd investigated, pieced her identity fully. Betrayal stung, yet his intent wasn't exposure. "Your words healed something in me. Stay, Amara. Let me know the woman behind them." The revelation shattered her plans, escape impossible with her family arriving soon for Leora's betrothal announcement. Stakes soared. Darius Voss was confirmed among guests, his letters hinting knowledge of her authorship, veiled threats of blackmail for her hand. Vulnerability peaked as Kieran drew closer, his touch on her arm electric. "I offer protection," he murmured, "but only if you choose truth over masks." Emotional turmoil raged, betrayal's bite yielding to passion's flame. Amara fled to the gardens, auburn locks whipping in the wind, emerald gaze stormy. Beliefs upended, perhaps recognition wasn't ruin, but salvation. But with Darius's carriage rumbling up the drive that evening, the shift demanded action: trust Kieran, or face isolation's abyss alone. Consequences crashed like relentless waves the moment Darius Voss crossed the threshold of the hall. Amara felt it before she saw him, the subtle shift in the air, the way conversations faltered for half a breath, the faint tightening in her chest that came unbidden, instinctive. The gathering had been in full bloom moments earlier, laughter floating beneath vaulted ceilings, candlelight glinting off crystal and gilt, the gentle hum of privilege disguised as ease. Then the doors opened. Darius Voss entered as though he owned the space by right of inevitability. He was dressed with deliberate restraint, dark tailored coat, immaculate gloves, no ostentation, yet nothing about him faded into the background. He moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to rooms rearranging themselves around his presence. Sleek. Predatory. A smile touched his mouth, practiced and pleasant, but it never reached his eyes. Those eyes were sharp, calculating, already searching. And then they found her. Amara's breath caught. Across the bustling hall, through a forest of silks and shoulders, Voss's gaze locked onto hers with chilling precision. Recognition flared instantly, followed by something far worse, satisfaction. His eyes narrowed, not in surprise, but in triumph, as though confirming a hypothesis long tested and proven. He did not hurry. He allowed the moment to stretch, to let the knowledge settle like a weight upon her ribs. Only then did he approach, exchanging greetings with hosts and dignitaries as he moved, his voice smooth, his laugh perfectly timed. By the time he reached her circle, Amara felt as though she had been standing at the edge of a cliff for hours. "Miss Thorne," he said softly, inclining his head. Her name, that name, spoken aloud here sent a jolt through her spine. "Or," he continued, lowering his voice as though sharing a confidence, "should I say Langford?" Her pulse thundered. She managed a polite smile, the kind drilled into her since girlhood, though it trembled at the edges. "The enigmatic muse," Voss went on, his tone velvety, "whose tales stir such controversy." His whisper brushed her ear during the exchange of courtesies, intimate and invasive. Amara felt chilled to the bone. He knew. Not suspected. Knew. Every carefully constructed wall she had built, pseudonym, publisher, distance, crumbled under the certainty in his gaze. "I must commend you," he murmured. "Tracing you was entertaining. London circles are smaller than one imagines. Your publisher has friends. Friends who talk." Her hand tightened around her fan. She dared not look toward Kieran, though she felt his presence somewhere nearby like a dim star, comforting, unreachable. "Of course," Voss continued lightly, straightening and addressing the group at large once more, "genius always leaves fingerprints." The words were polite. The threat was not. From that moment, the gathering became a maze with no exit. Dinners followed, each more suffocating than the last. By some coincidence too consistent to be accidental, Voss always found himself seated beside Amara. He maneuvered with the ease of a seasoned tactician, arriving just late enough to displace another guest, offering favors, invoking family ties. No protest could be lodged without seeming rude, paranoid, ungracious. His proximity was unbearable. His hand brushed hers when dishes were passed. His knee touched hers beneath the table, lingering a fraction too long. His voice dipped low, murmuring reassurances only she could hear. "You'll see reason soon," he whispered once, smiling benignly at the hostess as though discussing the weather. Amara's world constricted to the narrow space between her breaths. She laughed when expected. She nodded. She spoke of trivialities while her thoughts raced in frantic circles. He had laid out the terms with horrifying clarity during one of those dinners, his tone conversational, almost bored. Marry him. Or he would expose her. Expose not only her identity, but the content of her writings, twist them, weaponize them. The scandal would ripple outward, touching everyone she loved. Leora's carefully negotiated match would collapse under the weight of whispers. The family's already fragile standing would shatter. Respectability, once lost, would never be recovered. "Think of it as efficiency," Voss had said, sipping his wine. "One alliance. All debts erased. All indiscretions, contained. Contained by him. Kieran's presence offered little solace. Though he remained attentive, protective even, the social machinery surrounding them blunted his reach. Voss's family connections ran deep, entwined with the very guests whose approval Kieran would need to challenge him openly. Every attempt at intervention dissolved into politeness, into subtle deferrals. Later, Kieran would murmur, brows furrowed. "We'll speak later." But later never came. Vivian noticed first. "You're pale," she said one afternoon, pressing Amara's arm as they walked the garden path. "Have you been sleeping at all?" "I'm fine," Amara replied automatically. Vivian did not look convinced. "You're not." Amara forced a smile. "It's nothing." But the truth pressed against her ribs, begging release. The effort of holding it in became exhausting. Masks cracked under scrutiny. Every glance felt accusatory. Every laugh rang false in her ears. Isolation amplified her fear. She felt watched, measured, evaluated, not just by Voss, but by the entire room. Her anonymity, once a refuge, now felt like a noose tightening. The lowest ebb came beneath the moon. The conservatory was meant to be a sanctuary, glass panes arching overhead, moonlight spilling across marble tiles, the air scented with night-blooming flowers. Amara had gone there seeking quiet, a moment to breathe. Instead, she found him. Voss stepped from the shadows with unhurried grace, blocking her path. The doors closed behind him with a soft, final click. Glass fogged as their words heated the space. "You shouldn't be alone," he said mildly. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Move." He smiled. "You misunderstand. I'm offering a solution." She squared her shoulders, though her hands trembled. "I will not marry you." His eyes darkened, amusement giving way to something sharper. "Your family's debts," he said. "Easily erased with my fortune. Estates restored. Futures secured. I don't want your fortune." "No?" He leaned closer. "Then perhaps you'd prefer whispers. A spinster authoress peddling passions she dare not live. How long before curiosity turns cruel?" Her breath hitched. "London adores a fall," he continued. "Particularly a woman's." "Leave me alone," she whispered. "Refuse," Voss said quietly, "and I will ensure the truth spreads, embellished, of course. Your sister's suitor will withdraw. Respectable doors will close. You'll be the reason." The word struck with surgical precision. Desperation clawed at her throat. She turned and fled. Thorns tore at her emerald gown as she ran through the gardens, fabric ripping, hair coming loose from its careful pins. Tears blurred her vision. The world narrowed to breath and pain and the sound of her own heart breaking. She did not stop until her lungs burned. Kieran tried. He confronted Voss where he could, pressed discreetly for explanations, attempted to shift alliances. But Voss was untouchable, his family's influence woven into the gathering like iron threads. Every whisper of resistance was smothered by politics, by obligation. In a stolen moment in the library, Kieran's frustration finally broke through. "I can't fight what I don't know," he said, voice low and urgent. "Reveal all, and I fight with you." She wanted to tell him. God, she wanted to. The truth hovered on her tongue, heavy and sharp. But doubt poisoned the moment. Was his concern genuine, or merely scholarly curiosity? Was she an anomaly to be studied, a puzzle to be solved? If she laid herself bare and he turned away, she would lose the last fragile thing she had left. "I can handle it," she lied. Kieran searched her face, pain flickering across his features. "You don't have to do this alone." Yet she already was. The rumors began to work their damage. Leora approached her one evening, eyes shining with unshed tears. "He's withdrawn," she whispered. "My suitor. He says, there are concerns." Concerns. Such a small word for such devastation. "They say it's because of you," Leora continued, voice breaking. "Your eccentricities." Amara felt something inside her finally give way. Alone in her chamber, she sat in the dark, staring at the letter returned to her desk, pages once filled with promise, now meaningless. Her pseudonym, once her shield, now mocked her. Words that had given her life now threatened to destroy it. Everything was slipping through her fingers. Anonymity. Family. Love. Despair settled like a physical weight, pressing her into the chair. For the first time, she could not write her way out. Language failed her. The darkness closed in, vast and silent. This was the darkest hour. And she did not yet know whether dawn would come. Dawn came quietly. Not as a blaze of color or sudden revelation, but as a thinning of the dark, a gentle loosening of despair's grip. Pale light crept along the edges of the curtains, softening the room's sharp angles, brushing the furniture with a promise so faint it might have been imagined. Amara had not slept. She sat at the writing desk where she had spent so many nights wrestling words into obedience, her hands folded loosely in her lap, her shoulders bowed not in defeat but in stillness. The returned letter lay open before her, its paper creased, its ink familiar and damning. For hours she had stared at it, as though waiting for it to accuse her aloud. But the longer she looked, the quieter the shame became. Something shifted as the light grew. She rose and crossed to the window, drawing the curtain aside. Outside, the garden lay hushed beneath the mist, dew clinging to every leaf like 1,000 fragile mirrors. The fog thinned as the sun edged higher, its first ray cutting through the gray with quiet determination. The sight struck her harder than any threat ever had. Resolve did not arrive as thunder. It arrived like that ray, persistent, undeniable. Her writings were not a crime. The realization settled into her bones with startling clarity. The stories she had poured onto the page in stolen hours, under borrowed names, were not indulgence or rebellion. They were truth. They were survival. Tales of women who endured, who resisted, who refused to be erased. Stories shaped by longing and courage and pain, by her own life, rendered into something luminous. If Voss believed exposure would destroy her, he misunderstood the nature of fire. Amara straightened. She did not reach for pins or ribbons. Instead, she shook her auburn hair loose from its careful constraints, letting it fall freely down her back, a silent act of defiance. She changed into a fresh emerald gown, its cut simple but bold, its color rich as new leaves after rain. When she caught her reflection, she scarcely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes burned with purpose. "I choose truth," she whispered to herself. The words felt irrevocable. The study was empty when she entered, shafts of morning light illuminating dust motes drifting between towering shelves. The scent of parchment and ink grounded her, steadying her breath. She waited only a moment before footsteps approached. Kieran paused in the doorway, surprise flickering across his face at the sight of her, unbound hair, unflinching gaze, no trace of last night's despair. "Amara," he said softly. She did not preamble. She did not hedge. "I need you to listen," she said, her voice clear, unwavering. "And I need you to believe me." His expression sharpened instantly. He closed the door behind him. "I'm listening." She told him everything. Voss's arrival. The recognition. The whispered threat disguised as charm. The blackmail, marriage or ruin. Her voice trembled once, only once, when she spoke of Leora, of the damage already done. But she did not falter. Kieran did not interrupt. His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides, but he let her finish. When she was done, silence filled the room like a held breath. Then he exhaled slowly. "That bastard." She laughed once, brittle but real. "You believe me." "I never doubted you," he said. "I doubted myself." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her, as though giving her the choice. "There's more," he continued. "Something I haven't told you." She lifted her chin. "Tell me." "Voss isn't as untouchable as he pretends." Kieran moved to the desk, retrieving a leather folder. "My research networks, scholars, archivists, people who notice discrepancies others ignore, have been tracing irregularities in several family trusts. Money siphoned. Records altered." He opened the folder, revealing meticulous notes, copied ledgers, letters. "Embezzlement," Amara breathed. "Enough to ruin him," Kieran confirmed. "But it requires timing. Exposure without proof invites retaliation." A slow smile curved her lips. "Then we give him no room to retaliate." Their eyes met. Understanding sparked between them, bright and electric. "We confront him," she said. "On our terms." Kieran's hand lifted, hesitating, then settled gently over hers. "Together." The word resonated through her. Something fragile and beautiful unfurled in the space between them. Without quite deciding to, she leaned closer. He met her halfway, their foreheads touching, breath mingling. The kiss that followed was soft but sure, no urgency, no doubt. Just a sealing of intent amid parchment and ink, a promise forged not in passion alone but in trust. "We face this together," he murmured against her brow. For the first time in days, Amara believed it. Breakfast was a test of nerve. The long table gleamed beneath morning light, silverware arranged with ceremonial precision. Conversations hummed politely, but Amara felt the undercurrent, anticipation, unease. Voss sat opposite her, impeccably composed, his gaze flicking toward her with proprietary confidence. She met his eyes without flinching. Midway through the meal, she excused herself, crossing the room with measured grace. As she passed Voss, she slipped a folded note beside his plate. He glanced at it, brow lifting. Her smile was cool. "The library," she said softly. "If you wish to discuss terms." His lips curved in satisfaction. Hope surged, not wild or reckless, but steady. Leora caught her eye from across the table, her expression tentative. Amara inclined her head, just enough to reassure. Vivian's knowing nod followed, subtle but fierce. The pieces were in place. When Amara stepped forward this time, there was no mask. Only truth. Only resolve. Only a woman ready to claim her fate. The library thrummed with tension as guests assembled for an announcement, Kieran's orchestration drawing them like moths to flame. Amara stood poised, emerald gown accentuating her defiant stance, auburn waves cascading as she faced Voss at the center. Heroic twists unfolded, Voss lunged verbally, accusing her of deception and scandalous authorship, but Kieran interceded, voice thunderous. "Your threats end here," he declared, unveiling ledgers proving Voss's theft, witnesses gasping at the payoff. Confrontation escalated, Voss blustered, denying, but Amara's testimony sealed it, her words, sharp as her prose, exposing his coercion. Twists peaked when Vivian revealed her own investigations, allying with Kieran. Voss crumbled, banished amid disgrace, his power shattered. Emotional detonation, Kieran professed love publicly, proposing amid cheers. Amara accepted, triumph washing over her, relief in family's salvation, passion's embrace. The climax resolved in victorious unity, secrets transmuted to strength. In the aftermath's glow, Amara and Kieran wed in Beaumont's sun-dappled chapel, auburn hair crowned with wildflowers, emerald eyes radiant. Growth flourished, she published openly, her novels celebrated, subplots resolving, Leora's match secured, family debts cleared through Kieran's support. Vivian thrived as advisor, the manor alive with intellectual salons. Hopeful end, years later, their children played amid libraries, Amara penning tales inspired by their love. Fulfillment enveloped them, joy in recognition, a life woven from honest threads. No longer lonely, they embraced eternity's promise. How did this tale of unveiled hearts resonate with you? Comment below and subscribe for more stories of defiant love.